So this is a class opener that's actually gonna prepare you for a pop quiz that we're gonna have right now, okay? It's almost gonna be identical to it, right? So there's gonna be 5 questions, or I give you 5 numbers, and I give you the possibilities of you classifying them. And I want you to be as specific as possible. I don't want you to mention all the groups that the number belongs to. Like number 1 right here, the number 7, that's natural, right? I mean, yes, it could belong to a bunch of groups like rational, integer, but you know, as specific as possible, that's a nice natural number. Why? Because you learn how to count to 7 naturally. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So number 1 is natural. Natural. So number 7 is natural. Okay, and that's one correct answer. Let's move on to number 2. Now, number 2, the number pi, what do you guys say about pi? What kind of number is that? Irrational. It's a crazy infinite decimal that doesn't have a pattern, doesn't repeat. It's crazy. It is irrational. So pi is irrational. Okay, number 3, the number 0. What do we call that? Whole number. It's the number with the biggest hole in it. So 0 is a whole number. Okay? Now, what is the difference between a whole number and a natural number? Natural numbers are the ones that we learn how to count naturally, right? 1, 2, 3. Nobody started with the number 0, right? You had 1 toy, 2 toys. Those are natural numbers. You had to grow up a little to understand the concept of 0, right? So the first type of number that you learned was natural, right? Naturally, you learned how to count 1, 2, 3. You didn't learn about decimals or fractions. You naturally learned how to count 1, 2, 3, right? You grew up a little bit more and you learned about whole numbers, right? The number 0 included, right? So any number that's whole, including the number 0, is what we call a whole number. And then you grew up a little bit more and you realize that there's not all numbers that are positive or the number 0, but there's also negative numbers. Those are called integers. And then you grew up a little bit more and realized that not all numbers are nice, like 1, 2, 3, or like negative 1, 2, 3, or like 0, but some numbers are decimals or fractions, which are called ratios, and that tells us that they are rational numbers because the word ratio is in there. So any decimal or fraction is called a rational number. And there's also those crazy decimals which are called irrational, kind of like pi, or like the square root of anything that you can't actually, like the square root of 7, that's irrational. Square root of 3 is irrational. Square root of 25, that's not irrational. Square root of 25 is 5, which makes it natural. Anyways, moving on to number 4, that is a decimal. And what do we say about rational numbers? Any fraction or decimal is rational. Okay, so number 4, the answer is rational. So any decimal or fraction, if you had the fraction 1/2, that would be rational. If you have a decimal 1.5, that's rational. Okay, it's those crazy decimals that are infinite, that don't have a pattern, like pi, 3.14, and it continues forever, no pattern, no repetition. That's irrational. And finally, the last one right here, you have a nice negative 8. It's not a decimal, it's not a fraction, it's a nice negative number. What do we call those? Integers. And that's about it, guys, for classification. Now, we are going to have a test at some point, maybe this Friday. And on this test, we're going to have more numbers to classify. So don't think like, oh, we're done with this, we move on, we're not going to see it again. We're going to have it on the next test. We're just going to have a little pop quiz right now, but on the next test, we will have this again. Also on this next, on this pop quiz that we're having today, after this, we're going to be adding and subtracting integers, positive and negative numbers. So let's take a look at it. Let me zoom in a bit. Adding and subtracting the following integers. Simple. You either remember the rules that we went over or think of money. So I like to think of money. This is a positive 4 and this is a minus 7. Positive 4 means you have $4. Minus 7 means you owe $7. You have $4 in your pocket. You owe somebody 7. You can't pay them off completely. You could pay off the $4, but you're going to say, hey, I still owe you how much? 3. So that means negative 3. I still owe you 3. Okay, let's look at the next one. Now, before thinking of money, you have to change the minus minus to plus plus. Okay, so let's do that. Let's make that a plus, make that a plus. So you really have negative 4, which means that you owe $4, plus 7, that means you have $7 in your pocket. So you owe somebody $4, you have 7 in your pocket, you could pay them off. As a matter of fact, you'll have money left over. How much do you have left over? 3. So that's a positive 3, your answer, because you have $3 left over. Okay. Number 3, this is a negative 4, and that's a minus 7. Negative 4 means you owe $4. Minus 7 means that you owe $7. Okay, remember, a negative and a minus is the same thing. Okay, so you owe 4, you owe 7. Man, you owe somebody $4, you owe somebody else $7. You owe a lot of money. How much do you owe? You owe $11. So negative 11 is your answer because you owe 11. Okay. Number 4, again, before thinking of money, you have to change a minus to plus. So that's a plus, that's a plus. So right here, this is a positive 4 because there's no sign to the left of it. That's a positive 4 plus 7, that's a positive 7. That's like if you have $4 in your left pocket and you have $7 in your right pocket, how much money do you have?
11.
You have $11. That's why it's positive 11, not negative 11. Negative 11 would mean that you owe. Right here, you have 4 on your left, you have 7 on your right, you have a total of $11. Moving on to the next one, we have 7 plus a negative 4. A negative 4 means that you owe $4. Okay, so this plus sign is kind of insignificant besides that you're adding and subtracting. So you have 7, you owe $4. How do you end up? You have $3 left over. Okay. Now I see a lot of students make the mistake of thinking that this plus sign means that you literally have to add. And they say, oh, 4 plus 11 is, or 4 plus 7 plus 4 is 11. And they get the wrong answer. They put like negative 11 or something like that. It's incorrect. Again, this 7 means that you have $7. The plus negative 4, that means that you owe $4. Okay? So those are the answers for adding and subtracting. There's going to be 5 simple questions like that right now on the pop quiz following this video. And for the last section, multiplying and dividing, it's the same thing. I mean, not the same thing. You have to learn the rules that a negative times a negative is a positive. Or you could remember those situations of like if a bad thing happens to a bad person, that's good, right? It's up to you. But right here we have a negative 20 divided by negative 4. The rules are the same for multiplication or division. So what's the answer there? Negative 20 divided by negative 4. Is it negative 5 or is it positive 5? 5. Positive 5, right? Why? Because a negative times a negative equals a positive, right? Or a negative divided by a negative, in this case, equals a positive. If the signs are the same, the answer is positive. Now let's say you're just totally confused. Is this going to be a positive 5 or a negative 5? Just think about this. Let's say this is a bad, negative is bad, positive is good, right? A negative thing happens to a bad thing happens to a bad person. That's good. That's why the answer is positive. Okay? How about number 2? What's the answer going to be? Negative 30. Negative 5 times positive 6, that's negative 30. The only time you get a positive answer is if you have the same signs, like a negative times a negative or a positive times a positive. Go back to the 3rd grade. What's 2 times 3? 6. That was a positive 2 times a positive 3. That's a positive 6. So whenever the signs are the same, your answer is positive. So right here, negative, negative, the answer is positive. Right here, are they the same sign? No. That's why the answer is negative. So a negative 5 times a positive 6, the answer is negative 30. If you're confused about the rules, you could think of that situation. A bad thing happens to a good person. That's sad, right? If a bad thing happens to a good person, that's negative. That's bad. Okay, how about number 3? Remember, a fraction is really a division problem. So 24 over 6 is really saying 24 divided by 6. What is 24 divided by 6? 4. And of course, a positive and a positive is a positive. You could think of that little storyline. A good thing happens to a good person, that's good. Or the rules, if the signs are the same, the answer is positive. Again, on number 1, the signs were the same, the answer is positive. Over here, the signs are the same, the answer is positive. Number 4, the signs are the same. What's the answer going to be? Positive 56. The signs are the same, the answer is positive. A negative times a negative equals a positive. A bad thing happens to a bad person, that's good. Number 5, the signs are different. The answer is going to be positive or negative? So what's the answer? Negative 28. And that's it, guys. We have done pretty much 3 sections. Classifying. I think classifying is the most challenging one if you haven't studied the words. But the words are right here to select from. Adding and subtracting, just think of money. Multiplying, dividing. You could think of the rules, negative times a negative is a positive, or you could think of that situation, if a bad thing happens to a bad person, that's good, etc., etc. So what do you guys say? Mini quiz? Simple, 15 question?
Yes,
Let's do this.